mature, more wealthy, more sophisticated, someone who was at home in the exciting, fast-paced cities of the world. Well, after all, Kevin was only a farm boy at heart. Dressed in designer jeans and a plain white t-shirt, Sally drew back the curtains. When her eyes had adjusted to the glare, she looked out on a perfect Swainsdale morning. A few fluffy little clouds, one like a teddy bear, another like a crab, scudded across the piercing blue sky on a light breeze. She looked north up the broad slope of the valley side, its rich greens interrupted here and there by dark patches of heather and outcrops of limestone, to the long sheer wall of Crow's Scar, and noticed something very odd. At first she couldn't make it out at all. Then she squinted, refocused, and saw, spreading out along the slope just above the old road, 5 or 6 blue dots, which seemed to be moving in some kind of pattern. She put her finger to her lips, thought for a moment, then frowned. 15 miles away, in Eastvale, the Dale's largest town, somebody else was anticipating a Sunday dinner of succulent roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. Detective Chief Inspector Alan Banks lay flat on his stomach in Brian's room, watching an electric train whiz around bends, over bridges, through signals and under papier-mâché mountains. Brian himself was out riding his bike in the local park, but Banks had long since given up the pretense that he only played with the trains for his son's sake, and finally admitted that he found the pastime even more relaxing than a hot bath. He heard the phone ring out in the hall, and a few seconds later his daughter, Tracy, shouted through, "It's for you, Dad!" As Banks rushed downstairs, the aroma from the kitchen made his mouth water. He thanked Tracy and picked up the receiver. It was Sergeant Rowe, desk officer at Eastvale Regional Headquarters.
"Sorry to bother you, sir," Rowe began, "but we've just had a call from Constable Weaver over in Elmthorpe. Seems a local farmer's found a body in one of his fields this morning."
"Go on," Banks urged, snapping into professional gear.
"Chap said he was looking for a stray sheep, sir, when he found this body buried by a wall. Weaver says he shifted 1 or 2 stones, and it's a dead 'un all right. Looks like someone bashed his head in."
Banks felt the tightening in his stomach that always accompanied news of murder. He had transferred from London a year ago, sickened by the spiralling of senseless violence there, only to find in the Gallows View case that things could be just as bad, if not worse, up north. The business had left both him and Sandra emotionally exhausted, but since then things had settled down. There'd been nothing but a few burglaries and 1 case of fraud to occupy his attention, and he had really begun to believe that murders, peeping toms, and vicious teenagers were the exception rather than the rule in Eastvale.
"Tell Constable Weaver to get back up there with as many local men as he can muster and rope off the area. I want them to start a systematic search, but I don't want anyone else closer to the body than 10 yards. Got that?"
The last thing he needed was 6 flatfoots trampling down the few square feet where clues were most likely to be found.
"Tell them to put everything they find into marked envelopes," he went on. "They should know the procedure, but it won't do any harm to remind them, and I mean everything. Used rubbers, the lot. Get in touch with Detective Sergeant Hatchley and Dr. Glendenning. Tell them to get out there immediately. I want the photographer and the forensic team too, okay?" "Yes, sir," Sergeant Rowe replied. He knew that Jim Hatchley would be enjoying his usual Sunday lunchtime pint in the Oak, and that it would give Banks a great deal of satisfaction to interrupt his pleasure. "I suppose the super's been informed?" "Yes, sir. It was him as said to tell you."
"It would be," Banks complained. "I don't suppose he wanted to miss his Sunday dinner." But he spoke with humour and affection. Superintendent Gristhorpe, of all his new colleagues, was the one who had given him the most support and encouragement during the difficult transition from city to country. Banks hung up and slipped on his worn brown jacket with the elbow patches. He was a small, dark man in appearance, rather like the old Celtic strain of Welshman, and his physique certainly didn't give away his profession. Sandra, Banks's wife, emerged from the kitchen as he was preparing to leave. "What is it?" she asked.
"Looks like a murder."
She wiped her hands on her blue checked pinafore.